General Hospital spoilers for Wednesday, June 4th state that Michael Corinthos will testify, while Sonny Corinthos causes some trust concerns. Anna Devane will also have a theory, so here's what GH watchers might expect. Sonny will meet with Laura Collins by the Metro Court pool to discuss her concerns about the nasty Gio Palmieri situation that has erupted. Over with Gio, he'll doubt his faith in Sonny, possibly after eavesdropping on something. Whatever the case, Gio will glare at Sonny before confessing to Emma Scorpio Drake. Gio had a good conversation with Sonny and thought he could trust him, but he isn't so sure anymore. Next, Brooklyn Quartermain is going to truly let Lulu Spencer have it. Lulu played a significant role in the Gio reveal and blew things up in the worst way possible, so Brooklyn will slam her for all of the harm she's done. Across town, Lucky Spencer will surprise Elizabeth Baldwin, but she may have anticipated it after discovering what appeared to be an engagement ring box. If Lucky asks the question, Liz may not give him the answer he desires. It seems way too soon to get engaged, especially since Elizabeth isn't sure if Lucky is the type to fully commit. Although Liz and Lucky have enjoyed their reunion, this does not necessarily imply that remarriage is in their future. Other GH spoilers indicate that Anna will investigate a theory and become forceful with Jack Brennan as a result. Will Brennan supply some information that will help Anna prove what she is thinking? Anna will meet with Jason Morgan before the end of the week to get an update on some major news. Could this be related to Sonny's search for his unknown adversary? Michael will testify in court and face some difficult questions. The same is true for Sasha Corbin, who will be quizzed about the last time she slept with Michael. Rick Lansing will press Sasha to reveal her most recent heated Michael meeting, which culminated in the conception of her unborn child. Michael will freak out if Sasha panics and goes into labor too soon. Michael will stand up for Sasha when it counts and put Rick in his place. Before the end of the week, Carly will reveal Nina as the mastermind behind Drew's drugging and wild night with Jacinda, so there will be lots of action. The courtroom was unnaturally quiet, the kind of silence that falls just before a storm, heavy with expectancy and barely concealed tension. Michael Corinthos sat on the witness stand, fists clenched slightly in his lap, waiting for the next question. The air was heavy, and each breath seemed nearly too loud in the stillness. Everyone was watching him, not just the judge and the lawyers, but it seemed like the entire town. This was not merely testimony. This was a reckoning. Michael had been through many struggles, both professionally and personally, but nothing prepared him for this. He'd always imagined that justice operated in a specific way, that truth had weight, and that people could sense the difference between right and wrong. But when he looked across the courtroom, past the gallery full of familiar faces, he could see how perception had supplanted truth. His every word was being analyzed. His past, loyalties, and goals are all under scrutiny. The attorney's words penetrated the silence. Mr. Corinthos, could you please give the court the specifics of your role the night of the incident? He swallowed, not to hide anything, but because everything depended on how he said it. Not only what he said, but how. The night of the incident, Michael said, his voice firm. I wasn't even meant to be there. I had met with my son's pediatrician earlier that evening. I received an urgent call and everything changed. He paused to allow the weight of his words to sink in, but he noticed suspicion on the face of one of the jurors. This was not going to be simple. Back in the gallery, Carly sat stiffly, attempting to maintain a neutral attitude but failing. Her son was on the line here, not for guilt or innocence in the conventional sense, but for reputation, influence, and the future of his position in the family and business. She was aware of how rapidly things in Port Charles might change, and how public opinion could be swayed by a single statement. Brooke Lynn sat on the other side of the room, arms crossed and lips pulled tightly together, stewing in her own tempest rather than passing judgment on Michael. Her thoughts were not actually about Michael's trial. They focused on the woman seated 3 rows behind the prosecution table, appearing to be unobtrusive. Lulu Spencer. Brooke Lynn had not intended to face Lulu today, not here, not now, but something inside her snapped when she observed Lulu's smug interaction with the reporters outside the courtroom earlier. As if she was still more important than anybody else. As if she still has the ability to command attention just by coming into a room. Brooke Lynn had struggled for years to get out of Lulu's shadow, only to have Lulu reclaim the spotlight the instant her return to town was confirmed. Inside the courtroom, Michael continued to answer questions, his voice steady even as the lawyer delved deeper into timelines and reasons. But all the while, the air in the room changed, not because of Michael's evidence, but because Brooke Lynn had finally realized she couldn't be silent. During a break while whispers echoed around the gallery, Brooke Lynn rose from her seat and walked directly toward Lulu without hesitation. Her heels clicked like warning bells and Lulu stood, expecting a whispered word, possibly a frigid grin. She received neither. "What are you doing here?" Brooke Lynn asked, not bothering to lower her voice. "Not really. What do you hope to accomplish by sitting there and appearing to care?" Lulu blinked, acting surprised. "I am here as a concerned citizen. As a journalist. It's a high-profile case." Brooke Lynn shut her off. Do not pretend you are here for justice or integrity. You're here because you missed out on becoming relevant." Gasps echoed gently nearby. People were turning, craning their heads and whispering. Lulu looked around with caution, then lowered her voice. "Brooke Lynn, not here." "No, especially here," Brooke Lynn insisted, coming closer. "Because every time someone like Michael is dragged through the mud, people like you profit. You arrive with a notebook, pretend as if you're above everything, and then stir the pot from a safe distance. You can't do that anymore." Lulu's eyes narrowed. "Do you think I am the problem? Maybe the problem is that you're still insecure, believing that everyone else is in your way rather than claiming your space." Brooke Lynn gave a bitter laugh. "I own my home quite fine. I worked for it. We earned it. The people around you, not you, are the only ones who remember your name." Lulu's jaw stiffened, and she stopped speaking for a time. There were so many things she could have said, so many comebacks built up over years of tension, but she didn't. Because she could see that Brooke Lynn wasn't acting. Her heart was breaking. The bailiff's voice summoned everyone back, and the chamber quickly returned to order. Brooke Lynn returned to her seat without saying anything further, but the conversation continued. The confrontation had happened quickly, but its impact lasted. Michael returned to the courtroom, oblivious of what had happened outside, and took his seat on the witness stand. But the change in atmosphere struck him, and he looked at Brooke Lynn, catching her gaze. She nodded slightly, a nonverbal show of encouragement that he had not expected but greatly enjoyed. The following round of inquiries delved deeper into Michael's emotional connections, his decisions concerning Wiley, his relationship with Willow, and his previous interactions with Nina. The lawyer attempted to present him as unstable, with too many duties and impulsive actions. But Michael stood his ground. "What I've done with my son's best interest at heart," he added with firmness. "You can question my choices but not my intention." The judge leaned forwards. "Let's move on." So they did. For another hour, Michael answered every question with precision. Each time he disclosed a bit more about himself, not just as a businessman or a father, but as someone learning to make difficult decisions in a place that never forgets your failures. Back in the gallery, Nina sat stiffly beside Ava, exchanging strained looks. Nina hadn't intended to be drawn into another courtroom battle, but with Michael under scrutiny, she knew it was only a matter of time until her name was mentioned. It always has. Meanwhile, Carly watched silently. Her rage was not loud today. It was deeper and more protective. She recognized what this trial represented. Another attempt to destroy the Corinthos heritage by any means necessary. As the lesson came to a close, Michael stepped down, weary but composed. He turned to his family and exchanged silent nods. Nothing had been settled yet, but everyone knew what was at risk. Outside the courthouse, reporters flocked. Brooke Lynn brushed past them without saying anything, leaving Lulu trailing behind but choosing not to follow. For the first time in a long time, Lulu did not feel in control. Brooke Lynn demonstrated genuine emotional flawed strength today, which hit harder than any polished press remark could. Back at the Metro Court, Brooke Lynn sat alone at the bar, her glass of wine untouched. She wasn't particularly proud of the confrontation. However, she did not regret it. It felt liberating to reveal what she had been holding back for so long. Maybe Lulu didn't deserve the full force, or maybe she did. Either way, the moment had passed, and Brooke Lynn remained standing. Michael, meantime, had returned home to Willow and Wiley, intending to end the day on a more typical note. Nonetheless, tension continued. Willow had watched courthouse video clips and read online remarks. She didn't blame Michael, but she felt the burden of everything. So did he. Their chat that night was quiet yet meaningful. They discussed truth, survival, and how long they could play defense before losing parts of themselves. And in that instant, they both recognized something. Port Charles did not value integrity. Put it to the test. Constantly. As night came over the town, the lights turned on one by one. Jason lurked in the darkness outside Sunny's compound, pondering whether to approach. Sunny was inside, sipping a drink, his mind already 5 steps ahead of whatever game was being played. Nina paced alone in her apartment, wondering if her next revelation would cost her everything. Carly looked at her reflection and saw every argument she'd ever had engraved into her face. And Brooklyn? She looked up from her wine, took a long breath and then sipped. Not to forget the day, but to commemorate the moment when she stopped waiting for others to validate her. She had blasted Lulu. She had stated the truth. And in a town that thrived on secrets, that was its own form of revolt. Port Charles did not slow down for anyone. But in rare moments like these, it gave its people a choice: remain silent or finally speak. Today, more than one person had selected the latter. And tomorrow, everything may change tomorrow as a result. The broadcast begins with a quick recap of yesterday's final moments. Gio dedicates his next performance to his parents, Brooklyn and Dante, who did not want him, did not claim him, gave him away, and have lied to him throughout his life. He then smashed his violin and ran out of the room. Everyone in the audience is startled. Lucy encourages everyone not to worry, and that the show must go on. Lois and Brooklyn hurry out, leaving Dante stunned and asking Lulu what Gio is talking about. Cody walks up and urges Dante to follow him because they need to chat. Lucy stammers on stage, trying to figure out what to do, and proposes that everyone get a drink. Chase is also left startled on stage. Carly attempts to speak with Sunny, but he walks out of the ballroom. Then Carly stops Lulu from following and tells her she's had enough. Outside the ballroom, Ned, Olivia, and Sunny attempt to figure out what is going on. That's when Chase appears. Cody dragged Dante into a dressing room. Dante asks his friend what's going on. Cody admits he doesn't know the entire tale, but he does know Brooklyn had his baby. Liz is watching the nurses' ball on TV, calling it dramatic, and she feels horrible for Gio. Lucas, dressed in a tux, swings by with champagne to join her in celebrating the ball. At the PCPD, Mac is relieved to see Jason for once. Jason enters the questioning room, and Tracy tells him to get her out of here. At the PCPD, Jason informs Tracy that Diane is on the phone with the judge, and that he will post bail soon it is determined. Tracy feels Drew framed her, and she knows everything happened when he sailed up to their boathouse the other day. That's when he placed the medication in her car. She wonders why he's giving her the dead eye. Jason said he considered teaming up with Drew to be a bad decision. Backstage at the ball, Trina and Joss talk about what poor Gio is going through, and wish they could help him. Lucy enters and wonders why they aren't dressed in their costumes, insisting that they be on stage right away. Outside the ballroom, Chase informs Olivia, Ned, and Sunny that this is not his story to tell. Olivia claims they are family. Is this true? He claims it's true that Brooklyn had a baby in high school. Chase is unable to answer Ned's question about Joe's location. He doesn't even understand how or why Gio believes he is the child. Sunny believes Lois knows, and Olivia claims she was the first to pursue Gio. In a dressing room, Cody says that Brooklyn was pregnant with his baby at Camp Martha that summer, which is why she left early, and that he drove her to the bus station when she found out. He simply assumed she had ended the pregnancy. He only discovered out yesterday that she had the baby. Dante asks, "So that baby is Gio and Gio is my son?" Cody replies him, "Yeah." Dante claims his brain is short-circuiting and wonders if Brooklyn knew about Gio. Cody does not know and says he will have to ask her. Lucas joins Liz on the couch to watch the ball, and she inquires about his overdressing. He adds that he worked late tonight and decided to bring the ball to her because she was unable to attend. He takes out a paper crown for her and says he doesn't have one for Lucky, but she replies he's on an errand. Lucas then breaks out the bubbly. Tracy tells Jason at the PCPD that working with Drew was inspiring, but that he will regret his treachery. Mac enters the questioning room and informs Tracy that Diane has done her magic, and she is free to leave. As she signs the release papers, Jason receives a call and inquires as to what they expect him to do. Tracy requests that Jason drive her home, but Jason refuses because he has somewhere else to go. Jason departs and Mac informs Tracy that the bus stop is directly in front of them. At the ball, Carly and Lulu visit the ladies' room. Carly wonders how Gio found out. Lulu claims she didn't tell him, but he may have overheard her confronting Lois. Lulu needs to find Dante, but Carly says no. Carly believes Dante should hear the truth from Brooklyn and Lois, not her. Carly claims she set this train in motion and must get off the track before being flattened. Carly says she'll go watch her kid perform and advises Lulu do the same. Outside the ballroom, Olivia is perplexed as to how Lois could conceal this from her oldest friend. Dante joins them and searches for Brooklyn. Sunny claims that nobody, including Chase, knows where she went. Dante hurries away, and Sunny stops Chase from following him. Sunny believes this is now about Brooklyn and Dante, and they need to let them talk it out. Lucy walks to the stage to reassure everyone that everything would be fine, and she introduces Trina and Joss. Trina and Joss sing the song, "I'll Be With You." Liz asks Lucas if he wishes he was at the ball, recalling that Brad proposed to him at 1. He recalls Rick proposing to her at 1. Liz smiles as Carly shares a bomb with the audience, which blew her life up. Liz brings up Wiley's performance tonight with the other kids. Lucas was tempted to visit him, but he is not his father, and it is not his right to coo over him. Liz claims that in her living room, he may ooh and ah all over Wiley and say inappropriate things. Liz worries the kids will be so off-key, and she wonders whether Tracy was tazzed on the carpet. Kai, Portia, and Curtis are waiting behind the ball stage to present Trina with flowers. They inform her that she and Joss were the best performers of the evening. Portia and her father leave after their show since they have work in the morning, but they encourage Trina to stay. Trina and Kai kiss and Curtis and Portia leave. Curtis expresses gratitude to Portia for her convincing performance. Portia didn't want to ruin Trina's night because she was so pleased. Carly tells Joss that she and Trina were really fantastic. Joss claims they weren't intended to appear that quickly, and it was owing to Joe's delaying the program. She is unable to quit thinking about him. Suddenly, Drew and Willow appear, wishing to speak with Carly discreetly. Joss leaves away, and Willow and Drew want to put an end to the conflict over the kids because it is unhealthy for them. Drew asks Carly if she wants to establish common ground with them. Sunny also informs Olivia, as he did Chase, that they must let Dante handle Brooklyn and Lois on his own, and that they should all return to the ballroom to distract their thoughts and allow their children to do what they need to do. Once alone, Ned tells Chase that he's delighted Brooklyn had him to confide in, but did she not believe he could trust her own father? Drew informs Carly that they have the upper hand in the custody hearing, but they are willing to compromise. Carly would prefer that Willow speak for herself. Drew says, "We are one together." Willow agrees to let Michael keep the kids every other weekend in summer. That way, the kids will not be burdened if they move to DC. Carly cannot believe Drew would separate Scout from the rest of her family so soon after her mother's death. Drew believes it's a fair bargain. Carly replies she'll see them at court. Willow hurries away, and Drew warns Carly that if she loses Michael's children, her son would only blame her. Elsewhere, Ned can't believe what Brooklyn gone through as a teen and how he didn't know. Chase claims Brooklyn loves him and that she was afraid telling him the truth would hurt him. Ned wonders if Brooklyn thought that, or if Lois influenced her thinking. Lucy informs the crowd that they have broken their previous fundraising records, and thanks everyone for their support. At Liz's, she and Lucas eat Aiden's baked goods while discussing about what happened at the ball. At the ball, Lucy welcomes 5 rising stars to round off the evening and remind them of what is important. Confetti showers down as the children take their bows, and everyone applauds. Wiley sees his father and screams out, "Daddy!" Willow and Drew, like everyone else, are startled as Michael stands in the back of the ballroom. Wiley leaps into his father's arms and Michael looks at Willow and Drew and tells his son, "Come on, we are going home." Rory Gibson takes over the role of Michael Corinthos. As the nurses' ball came to a close, the lights lowered gradually, putting a beautiful glow over the stage, which had witnessed a tornado of passion, performance, and drama during the previous few hours. The crowd, still buzzing from the evening's poignant tributes and surprising twists, waited in silent expectation for the night's final moments. However, a weird tension persisted in the air. Something was missing. Or rather someone. Actually 3 people. Brooke Lynn, Lois and Gio, 3 names associated with this year's planning, rehearsals and suspected last-minute performances, were nowhere to be found. And no one could really explain it. First, it was dismissed. Brooke Lynn was known to duck backstage to prepare for a surprise performance or resolve a last-minute issue. Lois, being the lively and unpredictable force she was, could have made a detour for a theatrical entrance. And Gio, young, talented, and still new to Port Charles's circles, had not yet established the kind of rhythm that allowed people to track his every move. But as the evening drew to a close, murmurs spread around the ballroom. Where were they? Maxie Jones, the MC and coordinator, attempted to keep the night moving. She worked diligently to keep the audience enthralled, despite the growing confusion, wanting to keep the ball's charm intact. The last acts were poignant, the tributes forceful, and the evening's tone was generally joyous. But Maxie couldn't deny that a twinge of concern tightened in her stomach. She had seen Brooke Lynn earlier that evening, full of excitement, holding a clipboard in one hand and a headphone in the other. Lois had been there by her, providing feedback on lighting cues and final stage arrangement. And Gio? He'd been seen rehearsing guitar riffs in a side room, a worried but excited expression on his face as he prepared for what was believed to be a breakout performance. Chase was the first to truly raise the alarm. His concern for Brooke Lynn was evident. He tried not to show it in public, but his eyes continued searching the crowd, his hands twitching at his side as if eager to pull out his phone, despite the fact that he had no new messages. He recognized her habits and inclinations, and something didn't feel right. It was unusual for Brooke Lynn to go without a trace, especially on one of the most significant nights of the year, a night into which she had poured her heart. As Chase slipped away from the crowd to make another call, Olivia began to suspect something was amiss. Her mother instincts kicked in immediately, and her concern extended beyond Brooke Lynn. Lois, her best friend and Joe's mother, had been by her side all week, full of enthusiasm and flair, striving for perfection and promising a grand finish. Her absence now did not make sense. Olivia's stomach twisted with anxiety. She quietly excused herself and slipped into the backstage area, looking for them. What she discovered was unnerving silence. A few crew members hurried around, packing props or studying cue sheets, but they hadn't seen Lois or Brooke Lynn in over an hour. One technician reported seeing Gio leave the practice room shortly before his scheduled rehearsal block, but he never returned. Olivia's apprehension grew to fear. Back in the ballroom, the final figure was coming. Maxie, reading the crowd, made a snap judgment and changed the presenter's order to gain additional time. She signaled for Lucy to extend her thank you speech, which, predictably, developed into a hugely amusing monologue full of nervous giggles and awkward stares. Still, it was insufficient to fill the growing vacuum left by the missing trio. The talk spread to Sonny next. Always alert, he observed Chase and Olivia's peculiar movement right away. He approached Olivia quietly in the corridor, and when their gazes connected, there was no need for words. Something wasn't right. Olivia recounted what she knew, or rather did not know, and Sonny's face stiffened. It was not paranoia. It was instinctive. Sonny Corinthos never ignored his instincts. Security was subtly notified. Discreet searches commenced throughout the venue. Dressing rooms, rehearsal spaces, and even parking lots were searched in a calm but methodical effort to locate Brooke Lynn, Lois, and Gio without causing a panic. Meanwhile, backstage, a staff worker discovered Brooke Lynn's clipboard and headset abandoned near the stage's side entrance. Maxie was taken aback when she learned of this discovery, despite its tiny appearance. Brooke Lynn would never leave folks behind voluntarily, especially not during a live performance. The stage manager stated that no one had seen her leave, nor had she signed out of the production schedule, as all participants were supposed to do. Chase, who was becoming increasingly agitated by the second, joined Sonny and Olivia in a quiet huddle in the hallway's corner. The three swapped theories, none of which provided comfort. Could it be a simple miscommunication? Is there an emergency? Or worse, was something done to them on purpose? As if responding to the inquiry, a message appeared. Not a text. This is not a telephone call. However, a small packet dropped beneath the ballroom's main door, going unnoticed by most but swiftly recovered by a teenage usher. Lucy opened it, figuring it was a last-minute donation or a note of praise for the organizers of the ball. Instead, she read it once, twice, and then handed it to Maxie without saying anything. The note was brief, typed and unsigned. The show may have over, but the actual performance has just begun. Consider this the last act. Chaos did not break out immediately, but tension began to crackle beneath the surface like electricity. Maxie relayed the word to Sunny, Olivia, and Chase. Sunny's face darkened. He quickly called Dex and instructed him to begin tracking surveillance footage. Chase informed the local precinct, which launched a quiet inquiry without alerting the guests. Olivia, overwhelmed yet composed, insisted on taking part in the hunt. As security swept the venue, Dex found the first lead. Gio was seen leaving the parking area to make a phone call shortly after sunset. He appeared calm but attentive. Lois quickly followed, obviously crying out to him. Brooke Lynn emerged a few minutes later, walking quickly and looked agitated or concerned. A dark, unmarked van then drew up alongside the back exit. The remaining film was cut off due to the camera's perspective. It wasn't long until the worst-case scenario was the dominant theory. They hadn't simply vanished. They'd been stolen. The ramifications were huge. Gio, Lois' son and a new member of the wider Corinthos group could have been a target. Lois had her own set of enemies, many of whom she knew from her youth in Bensonhurst and the music scene. And Brooke Lynn? With her Quartermain ancestry, business connections, and relationship with Chase, she was anything but a neutral party. Some may have been the primary target, while others may have been used as pawns in a bigger strategy. The guests filtered out slowly as the ball officially ended, without the scheduled climax and amid confusion. Some suspected that something had gone wrong, but no notifications were made. Others assumed the night hadn't gone as planned. But for those closest to Brooke Lynn, Lois, and Gio, the evening would signal the start of a far more personal problem. Back at the Quartermain mansion, Olivia and Chase reunited with Tracy and Ned, who had left the festivities early and were surprised to learn of the disappearances. Emotions flared. Accusations were leveled, mostly motivated by fear and uncertainty. Ned scolded himself for not staying longer. Tracy accused the event personnel of failing to fulfill their duty. But behind it all there was a common terror, something more than just worry. This felt purposeful. This felt premeditated. Michael was the next person called in. His corporate instincts kicked in, and he proceeded to investigate the various motives. Could this be tied to ELQ? To Nina's most recent missteps? What about Valentine's silent disappearances in the weeks running up to the ball? The alternatives were limitless, and none of them good. Olivia sat quietly in Brooke Lynn's room, staring at a framed photo of her daughter and Gio laughing during a rehearsal session. She held it hard, her knuckles white. Whatever it was, whomever was behind it, they had started war on the wrong family. And while the nurses' ball finished without the expected curtain call, the genuine drama had only just begun. Poor Charles had seen a lot of disappearances before. But this one felt different. It was too personal, too direct. A message was being sent. Brooke Lynn has always had a mixed combination of affection and frustration for her mother. Lois, with her limitless energy and unvarnished ideas, had been a source of strength for Brooke Lynn, but she could also be a thorn in her side when things became too intense or personal. That tension had been building for several weeks, slowly and softly, like pressure behind a dam. When it eventually shattered, neither of them could forget. The debate began with a disagreement about Gio. Lois had been spending more time with him, supporting his music, including him in Quartermain family gatherings, and interfering in decisions that Brooke Lynn thought were not hers to make. Lois stated she was simply being supportive as any good mother, or aunt-like figure, would do. But for Brooke Lynn it felt like a line was being crossed. Gio was no longer just a talented youngster from the street. He was preoccupied with family issues that had grown increasingly complicated, and Brooke Lynn believed Lois was not respecting boundaries. Voices were raised. Words were spoken that cannot be taken back. Brooke Lynn, feeling pushed to the brink, accused Lois of constantly attempting to control her life, from her career to her friendships and most recently her relationship with Giovanni. Lois was taken aback not by the anger itself, but by the deep grief that fueled it. Brooklyn felt unheard, dismissed, like a supporting character in her own narrative. The outburst left both women bruised and speechless, and Lois walked away, trying to give her daughter space while still nursing her own wounds. While that emotional storm raged, another bombshell was quietly detonating in a totally different section of the Quartermain universe. Tracy had never enjoyed shocks, especially those that came in the shape of family discoveries. So when she found Gio wasn't just some child with musical talent, but was actually related, she was taken aback in a way that visibly rattled her. The confirmation was obtained through a combination of DNA testing, whispers from the past, and a few buried family secrets that could no longer be kept hidden. Gio, it turned out, was more than simply a casual relationship or nostalgia for the area. He was related by blood. Tracy's former friend's son, or more precisely, someone whose link to the family had been quietly abandoned years before. And now here he was, a young man who had no idea how deep his ties with the Quartermains ran. Tracy did not respond right away, but those who knew her well could see the wheels working. She was calculating what this meant for the family heritage, the power dynamics, and Brooklyn, who clearly had more personal stakes in Gio than she had previously disclosed. Tracy wasn't known for being sentimental, but family was still family, and that changed everything. Whether she liked it or not, Gio was suddenly someone she'd have to keep an eye on, and possibly even protect if things went bad. While Brooklyn argued with Lois and Tracy faced the realities of Joe's true heritage, Michael made a decision that would shatter the foundation of his family in an entirely different way. Michael and Willow's tension has been slowly growing since the SEC crisis rocked their lives. Despite their public display of solidarity, confidence had deteriorated in private. Willow had tried to forgive and understand, but Michael's increasingly guarded nature and fixation with control were wearing her down. She desired peace whereas he sought power. It was not a sustainable blend. When Michael decided to remove Wiley and Amelia without notice, it wasn't technically a kidnapping, but it felt like one. He had full parental rights and exercised them. He persuaded himself it was to keep them safe from instability, hazardous influence, and the uncertainty he thought Willow was putting up with. But he didn't speak to her first. He did not ask. He acted. Willow was devastated. She thought she was moving toward healing. Not only with Michael, but with herself, Nina, and all the fractured branches of her family tree. The next thing she knew, her children were gone, and the guy she loved had caught her off guard in an almost unforgivable way. Michael did it with the unnerving serenity of someone who was convinced he was correct. He described it as transitory. He told her it was merely a break, a chance to regroup and consider things out. But his tone made no room for compromise. He had already taken a decision, which he considered would be beneficial in the long term. The irony, of course, was that by attempting to save the family, he risked breaking it completely. The news of his acts circulated swiftly. Sonny was enraged, not just because Michael had made a unilateral move, but also because it reflected the ruthless decision-making that Sonny had been accused of for years. Carly, too, was astonished, wondering whether to defend or confront her son. She saw echoes of herself in Michael's acts, which worried her. Willow, heartbroken but not defeated, fled to a secluded place with Nina of all people. The exact woman she had been hesitant to trust was now the only one providing unreserved support. Nina, trying not to overstep, merely offered her presence, and for the first time Willow accepted it. She grieved, not just for her missing children, but also at the reality that the man she thought she knew could never return. Brooklyn, still reeling from her personal confrontation with Lois, felt herself torn between loyalty and confusion. She witnessed Michael's sorrow and understood some of his anxieties, but she couldn't justify what he'd done. As Tracy pondered the truth about Gio, Brooklyn began to question everything: who she could trust, where her family stood, and whether anything in her life could ever return to normal. The strings of family, love, hate, and control were tightening in all directions. And as the days went, it became evident that something major was on its way. The foundation fissures were not simply forming, they were splitting wide open. And everyone in Port Charles was going to experience the earthquakes.